We're on the internet. We should make this international. Get people from all over the world to come on the podcast.
No, forget it. No. I've already tried that. Several versions of it, and it never works. It's East Texas, so I thought, hey, we'll make a show in Spanish, and no, it didn't. It didn't work out.
Bienvenidos a Houston County News.
Amigos y amigas, bienvenidos al gran podcast de Houston County News. Yo soy Gregorio Ricci y nos da mucho gusto tenerlos con nosotros. Yeah, and then I was eating a bratwurst one day, and I thought, wait a minute, let's make a podcast in German. And no.
Willkommen bei Houston County News.
Oh, haha, meine liebe Freundin, herzlich willkommen zu dem Podcast. Das war nichts Wichtiges, meine Freundin. Machen wir doch weiter, ja? And then, my wife's from Russia. We got a little girl from Ukraine. I thought, I'll make a podcast in Russian, man. That'll be a huge hit. And it was terrible.
Добро пожаловать в новости округа Хьюстон.
Доброе утро всем. Добро пожаловать на подкаст новостей. Меня зовут Григорий Ричи. Знаете, ребята, мне кажется, наше правительство иногда... No, I was kidding. It was a joke. Oh, my God. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of Houston County News. I'm Master Reporter Greg Ritchie. It's so nice to have you along with us on another beautiful podcast. Well, Kendall, we hope it's going to be beautiful. We really don't know, I guess.
We don't know.
But we're certainly going to try our best, not like always. Coming up on the show, we're going to be visited by Pipp Gillette, and he's got some really cool presentations coming up, Kendall, for this blues festival.
Oh, wow.
That we've got going on the end of the month, and we're going to talk to him about that. Also, Morris Luker, Precinct 1 Constable, is in the paper, unfortunately, and I know that caused quite a bit of stir in the community and online, but be happy to talk about that here in a minute and kind of what's going on for that. And Kendall Hickson, the fair is over. Are you... Probably got a little more free time you did this time last week.
I'm honestly pretty sad it's over because it's one of my favorite weeks out of the entire year. But overall, it was really good. I just wish it hadn't been on Easter weekend. That was a little unfortunate. But overall, it was fantastic.
Easter weekend kind of surprised everybody. I had a preacher friend of mine who said that a regional group of preachers had organized some conference.
Oh, wow.
And then they said, oh, gosh, that's Easter week when pastors are really busy. And they said, well, we've already paid for the food stuff, so we're not going to cancel it. Oh. And so they were all trying to organize bell choirs and, get to the festival. Now, so you were an ambassador. What were you doing this year? Rabbits, I think.
I did rabbits, and unfortunately, I did not make sale, but there was quite a few people that I'm so blessed, but they added on to me even though I didn't make sale.
Now, so I've never owned a rabbit.
Yes, sir.
I've eaten a bit of rabbit.
Yes.
I didn't know it was rabbit until I was halfway through it, and I said, "Honey," and then I said, "I don't know, it's pretty good." What makes a good rabbit?
I think, this is my first year, so nobody quote me on anything, but I think it was a lot to do with their bone structures. You want them to be, the three you show, very, very identical, wow. And I guess mine were not, so... So that did not happen.
Look, this time I've got Harry the Hunchback.
Yes.
The rabbits are all sort of... and they all look like me.
Oh.
Now, we've got the Rodeo Queen contest going on. We had all of you ladies here. We still need to get Miss Hopkins.
Yes.
From Latexo. She was so busy at the fair, but Are y'all already practicing? What's going on with that?
So we have been practicing since about February. I don't know if Miss Heather had mentioned that or not.
She said like it's a lot of preparation.
Yes, there's a ton, but it is super, super worth it. Everybody is so awesome. So like our last practice before our horsemanship competition is like April 20th, 28th, somewhere around there.
Now, when is the rodeo?
The rodeo is May 7th through the 9th.
7th through the 9th. Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to give you the money today for our banquet table.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna get a little 4-person table there, so we have no idea what's gonna happen.
Me neither,
Queen
man.
Gala. Heather wasn't 100% sure also, but you come and hang out, Queen around,
Yes.
just have a good time. So
Yes, I agree.
as long as the chicken's not burnt, most of the rest of
It
it.
should be okay.
Well, folks, we've got a fun show for you this morning, and a couple. We've got a new advertiser with us. Out of Lufkin there, good friends out of there, Greater Lufkin Auto Auctioneers, and they're going to have a nice little commercial here coming up. So enjoy the show. We'll be back with more.
Looking for powerful equipment at a price that works? Don't miss the tractor and heavy equipment sale at Greater Lufkin Auto Auction. May 9th at high noon, open to the public, with lightly used farm and heavy machinery ready to work when you are. Browse the inventory online and get ready to bid. Greater Lufkin Auto Auction. Big machines, bigger savings. At Davy Crockett Grill, food isn't just what we serve. It's our passion. From pizza and catfish to pulled pork, burgers and steaks, and those free pork cracklings to snack on. This is home-style cooking done right.
Come see us at Davy Crockett Grill. For comfort you can taste.
Well, folks, you may have seen in the newspaper this past week, we had a story in there about Precinct 1 Constable Morris Luker turning himself into authorities over in Leon County. And, of course, that's a big story. I understand that. So I got word of it a few days before we had to turn in the newspaper. And I looked into it a little bit. I actually called Mr. Luker. Now, I've known Morris and his wife Sharon for a few years now. We're not, like I say, golfing buddies, but anytime I see Morris, I say hello. I know he and his wife are avid readers of the newspaper. And as far as I have ever seen or encountered or experienced myself, really good and nice people. When I was down with my leg, Miss Sharon brought by, and my wife will tell you some of the tastiest food we have ever tried. And I even tried to get the recipe, and she said, no, that's a family secret. I said, fair enough. It was so good. But anyway, so I wasn't sure about any of this. So I called Mr. Luker and just said, hey, listen, this is what I've heard. What's going on? And as always, he was happy to talk and very kind and polite. But he basically said, look, you're going to have to talk to my attorney. His attorney has not responded to me yet. But basically said what he's always said, do what you got to do. And you do your job and publish what you have to publish. So not that I would have hidden it anyway, but I when it's something like this, of this nature, and somebody that I at least have a general knowledge of personally, I will call them sometimes, just say, hey, listen, there's a story coming out. I called the Elections Administration and said, hey, I've got a story coming out about allegations of people buying votes. And I do that because I'm not here to blindside anybody, and maybe they can add to the story or help with it or anything else. So I contacted Leon County. They were able to provide me the arrest details, the mugshot. Still wasn't really clear what this was all about. Official oppression was the charge, but that can mean so many things. If you look that up, it could just mean anything. Eventually, I was able to find the actual grand jury indictment, which we hadn't heard had come down, and the charges were a little more specific, as I'm sure you read in the paper. And now, I don't know the victim personally, the alleged victim, I should say. So I have no way of knowing whether these allegations are true, false, or anything in between. The only thing I will say is people are arrested every day in Houston County. And most of them would probably tell you themselves, yeah, I'm guilty. I had a couple beers, and I drove home, and I don't have license tags, and my driver's license expired last year, and my insurance ran out. So, yeah, I probably had that one coming. But there are also people, and I've seen this myself, where the allegations prove not to be true. Now, I have no way of knowing in this case, and I'm not saying they're true, false, anything else. All I'm saying is, and we put it at the bottom of all of our little crime stories, all suspects considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and we mean that. We don't presume anybody. There was a case of a man in Grapeland a couple years ago accused of murder, and I put his face on the front page. Here's the man accused of murder. And as I looked into it a little bit, I talked to the police chief at that time in Grapeland, and I said, I'm not super comfortable with this. This something feels off. And he said, you're right. And it's not this guy, and we're going to let him go. And so the very next newspaper, the one right after, as soon as I had, discovered that was the case, I put his picture back in there, as big as the first one, and said, released, not guilty, innocent. And called his mom and apologized. Felt terrible for that. Now, it was the best information I had at the time, but, I understand these are real people's lives. So I have no idea what happened with these allegations. Maybe they're just true. And a terrible thing happened, and that'll have to have its consequences. Maybe it was something innocent that was misunderstood. Again, don't know. Maybe it was somebody making a false allegation. Couldn't tell you. I think it's going to be a while before we get any closure to this particular situation. Because it's an elected official, you have to move a lot of the stuff out of the county. Our local DA moved it to Anderson County. The Texas Rangers were brought in. You don't want people to investigate themselves just to keep it all clean. I hope they're false. Just me personally, I pray that they're false allegations and there's some simple explanation, and even the alleged victim comes back and says, you know what, actually this wasn't quite the way it sounded. Something. On the other hand, if a crime was committed, hey, do the crime, do the time, or whatever the old saying is. So I just wanted to kind of explain that a little bit better, because I know there was, I saw all the speculation online about it, and people were saying, well, how come the sheriff's department hasn't? Well, Mr. Luker doesn't work for the sheriff's department. He's basically an independent contractor. He's elected by the people. So his boss are basically you and I, within reason. So there was no, cover up here. Nothing was hidden. Mr. Luker, for whatever reason, chose to go down to Leon County. Looks like he met up with a Texas Ranger there, turned himself in, got processed, and was on his way very quickly. And, generally in these kind of things where it's a law enforcement person, certified law enforcement, it's very common to release them on a public personal recognizance, and basically say, look, this person has links here. We don't think they're going to flee to, Mexico City tomorrow. There's no great danger to the public, but we process them, do the mugshot, do the paperwork, and kind of let them go on and let the trial go on. So that's what's going on with that. If we do find something else, of course, we'll have it in the newspaper and here on the podcast. But there's always a lot of speculation around those kind of things, and I just want to kind of clear up exactly where the reporting came from, how I got my facts, and where it stands today.
Camp Street Blues comes to historic downtown Crockett April 24th and 25th. Friday night in Bear Hall, Texas Flood brings the music of Stevie Ray Vaughan. Saturday, it's the Car and Truck Show and Shine, Artist Walk, and the Blues Dog Parade at 11. Enjoy live music at the Crossroads stage. Food trucks and Stetsty will be there with great refreshments. At 3, the Camp Street stage kicks off with the Community Gospel Choir, and then Mustang Red, the Misty Blues Band, Sue Foley and the Headliners, the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Tickets at Discover Crockett, Texas, or at the gate.
And now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the show.
Houston County Sports!
Good morning. With your Houston County News Sports Update, I'm Peyton Pierce. The Crockett Bulldogs and Lady Bulldogs will be heading to East Bernard High School April 15th for their area meet. Good luck to the boys and girls in all of their events, and we wish you luck. The Lovelady Lions and Lady Lions both won their district titles last night and will be also headed to the next level. In baseball, the Grapeland Sandies beat Centerville 2-0 last week. A huge win for the team, with starting pitcher Aiden Owens getting 21 outs in the game. The Lovelady Lion baseball team faced the Latexo Tigers last week, winning 12 runs to 6 with Brady McCullough and Hunter Bolinek on the mound. John Ali took the loss for Latexo. In softball, the Lady Lions won 2 games last week, beating Leon in a shutout 9-0, with another shutout against county rival winning over the Sandiettes 15-0. Lady Lion, Madison McMillan, driving in 4 runs on 3 hits in the game. Lovelady has won their last 7 games. The Latexo Lady Tigers won their away game against Centerville 8-6, with the girls sitting at a 6-0 lead in the 5th before Centerville began a comeback. Sarah Furs took the win, striking out 6 and walking none. With your Houston County News Sports Update, I'm Peyton Pierce. Catch you next week.
Houston County, Texas is a lot of things. It's our amazing cities and towns, Davy Crockett National Forest, and our fields and streams. It's cattle and lumber, manufacturing and tech support. It's national brands and mom and pops. It's our churches and it's our schools. For many of us, Houston County is home. Come visit us and see for yourself what makes this place special. Houston County, first in Texas history, first in our heart.
Well, folks, welcome back to Houston County News. And this week we got a very special guest in the studio with us, an old friend of ours and kind of a legend in his own time, Mr. Pipp Gillette. Pips, good to see you. Now, I've written a lot about you, everything from German tourists to Carnegie Hall and kind of everything in between. But for those who may not know you, tell me how you got from a little old town in New York to a little old town in Texas sitting there this morning.
My mother was from Lovelady, and as a young girl, as a college-age girl, she decided that, my grandmother had a general store in Lovelady, and she sold everything in the world, from groceries to boots to jeans to,
I'm old enough to remember those stores.
A real general store.
Right.
And every aisle was a different there was a pharmacy, pharmaceuticals, there was but anyway. And she sold a lot of what they called notions, things that make clothing, patterns and cloth and all the material you would need to make your own clothes, dresses. And she carried Vogue magazine because she wanted everyone to keep up with what's going on. So my mother saw this ad in the back of Vogue for a fashion design school in New York City. And she had always sewn her own clothing and was very good at that. She had done that for her whole life, basically. So she said, now that's what I would really like to do. And so she went off to New York, got on the train at the depot there in Lovelady, and got off in New York City and went to Trapp-Hagen School of Fashion Design. And this was about 1940, I guess. And I always thought that was rather extraordinary. It was made me frightened because I wouldn't have been able to.
I couldn't have done that at that age. No way. By myself. Forget it.
So she went to this school, and the folks that ran the school, Mrs. Trapp-Hagen and William R. Lee, who was her husband, suggested that she get a job as a waitress in this little restaurant that they liked a lot, just thinking it would be good for her to get out amongst folks. So she was working there, and her busboy, who was a studying actor, was about to change jobs. He was about to leave his busboy job and model nude at the Art Students League.
That's what you do.
And so his girlfriend came up to my father and said, look, Yule is about to leave his job as the busboy, so this is your chance if you want the busboy job. Take it. So he did, and that was Yule Brenner that went to model nude at the Art Students League.
Wow.
And my father took his job, and so that's how my mother and father met because of that. So we've always blamed Yule Brenner for what happened after that.
But if he hadn't gone to model nude, I'd be talking to Pipp Brenner, maybe. Never thought of that, did you? Now, So again, I've written about you so much, and there's plenty of stories I could tell. But in your own words, explain kind of your musical career and some of the, not just the traditions that you're preserving, but some of those traditions you call back to, and some of the storytelling, and just kind of the legacy you're leaving behind here.
Well, I don't know what that will amount to, but so my parents met there. My brother, when he was about to arrive on the scene, my mother came back to Crockett, and he was born in the hospital that's now a parking lot over there on 4th Street, I guess it would be. And then they went back to New York, and they were living in Staten Island, New York. And when I came along 5 years later, they didn't do me the same favor of coming back to Crockett. I was born in an exotic island in the Far East, Staten Island. And so they were there for a short while, and then they moved to Yonkers, New York. And that's where they ended up forevermore. But every summer we'd come, my brother and I, and my mother, father, and Guy and I would come down to visit with my grandparents. And we would drive down, and of course this was pre-interstate days, and pre-air conditioning days, windows down.
Lots of windows. Every red light, you would sit and sweat until we get going.
And so we would do that, and if my father couldn't come with us, we would take the train, and that was a really wonderful experience. Get on the train in Penn Station in New York City and get off at the depot in Lovelady. Wow. That was really...
Well, that's a lot of country to see, especially back then.
And of course, the thing about the trains is they go right through towns, so you really see...
Right.
You see the country.
There's no interstate, there's no loop. You go right through downtown, because the train station may have been built before the town in some cases.
Exactly.
That's
so
right.
So you really saw the places you were in, and I loved it.
When I travel through Europe, I still do it by train. It's just, there's nothing quite like it.
Well, it's sad, very sad to me that we let the trains go, It's just really pitiful.
Well, if you wanted to take an Amtrak from, let's say, Houston to New York, I think you have to go to Longview, and then it's like really
and then
expensive.
I think to Dallas, and I don't know. It's always crazy, and just finding the station, your closest place to catch it, is not easy. I've always wanted to take a train out to, I do some of these performances at festivals like Elko, Nevada. Well, the train Amtrak does go through Elko, Nevada,
right.
And also they have one that goes through Alpine, Texas, where there is another Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gallery. And I've always said, boy, wouldn't it be great to go to Alpine by train, and not drive it all the way. But
it'll cost you more than flying there.
Where you hook it up.
Where do you find it? Well, you just mentioned cowboy poetry, so let's talk a little bit about that part, because every time I've seen you perform, there's plenty of music, but the stories that you've been able to find and preserve and are pretty phenomenal.
Well, thank you. Again, we were living in Yonkers during the winter and going to school, and we were sort of always getting ready for our summer trip to Texas. And so my parents bought a lot of Folkways records, a lot of the singers, and of course relating to Texas and cowboy music. So we heard Cisco Houston and Hermes Nye and Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Ed McCurdy, and they were singing the real songs that people sang in the 1870s, 1880s, and earlier. And that's what fascinated us and really we related to. My parents were not interested in very much at all in kind of pop music. They didn't care about the early rock and roll, and they didn't care about the pop singers, and they were more interested in the folk stuff, or even some Broadway shows and opera and a few things like that. But so we would be reading up on Will James novels, and we'd be reading books about Texas and about getting ready for our summers, So that was.
Was it hard to go back to Yonkers every fall?
Yeah,
you missed the open skies.
Well, of course.
Rolling tumbleweed.
I don't know. It was an interesting
contrast.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in those days, because we're talking the 50s, So, I mean, in those days, for one thing, segregation was still in existence down here.
Right.
It was not up there. You cross the Mason-Dixon line, and suddenly you see the white only, colored only, and that was quite a shock, really. I mean, I was prepared for it. We always knew what was gonna, but it was just a different world.
What a change in one lifetime, though. If you think about how much things have changed.
And there were things. For example, I mean, I always mentioned the fact that there were products you didn't see anywhere else, like Fritos, for example. Were not a national brand. They were out of Dallas.
Okay.
You only saw them in Texas.
Right.
You only got Fritos when you were here.
Or maybe Dr. Pepper or certain other things.
Yeah, a lot of
of course.
A lot of different products were much more regional, and they hadn't gone.
One reason I hate traveling, even by car today, is that every town has got the same stores, the same restaurants, the same prices, the same taste, the same. And man, when I was a kid, you'd search long for where to get a lunch, and you go, look at that little hole in the wall. All the cops are eating there. It's probably a good place, probably safe and clean. And or you look for the truckers or whatever. And man, today, unless you're willing to go hunting, you eat at the same sort of joints you eat at everywhere.
Right.
Very boring. The country's been very boring in a lot of ways.
Well, the other thing that was very regional was the music, because when you listen to the radio in those days, all the radio stations were playing. It was stuff from there.
Right.
It was regional. It was live. It was real. And I mean, the DJs were live, and it all wasn't coming from one source.
Satellite, yeah.
And so you heard, that was always kind of great fun. We'd listen to KIVY and hear songs that we would never hear in New York, unless they really broke nationally. And then suddenly, and usually about 3 months, 4 months later, you'd start hearing it up in New York.
And you tell your friends, I heard that months ago, man. That's not
right. But of course, like I say, a lot of it you never heard again because it didn't, break.
Well, I worked for Clear Channel, big radio company, and I knew that radio was dying because I asked one of the programming people. I said, we play the same 10 songs again and again and again across 100 radio stations. And he said, well, people don't always know what they like, but they like what they know. And I thought, oh, we're doomed. We're doomed to plastic crap music forever. Now, I want to talk to you about this Blues Fest coming up. It's the 24th, 25th, because Camp Street Cafe is going to play a big part. But before we get to that, how did Camp Street Cafe come into your hands? I know there's a ton of history there. It's such an amazing location. And
well, my grandfather owned. He had been a partner with a fellow. They owned essentially both sides of the street and all those buildings, and they had the buildings built actually, and as rent property. And they would rent them all out, and so we. When everybody was gone, and we were never very familiar with it at the time, not as kids growing up, and so when we realized we had to pay taxes on this property, we found out do
something with it.
And then, of course, the city condemned the other side of the street because it was deteriorating, and we weren't maintaining it because we, for one thing, didn't really realize that it was something that we were connected to. So, so it was always something my grandparents owned, and then the only building that we could save was the one we're in now, the Camp Street Cafe building, and that was originally there were 3 front doors and 3 sections to it, and the cafe on the right was the Starlight Cafe and taxi stand. There was the Starlight Barbershop, and there was the Starlight Pool Hall, and they were all connected. And
that's awesome.
We found out that Lightning Hopkins used to go in there and play and for tips, and then we found out he played up and down the street, and Frankie Lee Sims, who was a cousin of his, played there. Then we found out that the nightclub, the Paradise Inn, which was a few blocks from Camp Street, that had all the touring bands, B.B. King, Gatemouth Brown, Amos Milburn, Big Mama Thornton, and of course T-Bone Walker came through town. Town, Ray Charles, just about everybody that was a touring band at that time came through Crockett because, of course, it's centrally located between Dallas and Houston.
Sure.
And
No interstate, you got to come through anyway. Might as well sing a set and make a little money, and yeah.
so we found out that, of course, Frank, I'm trying to think of the fellow who managed the Starlight Complex, also managed the Paradise Inn. And I'm drawing a blank on his name, naturally. But anyway, he managed the Paradise and he managed Starlight, and found out that after the shows at the Paradise Inn, after it was over and shut down, they sort of after hours spot to hang out would have been the Starlight.
Play a little pool, get a little food, play the guitars.
And so,
well, so Frank Robinson was one of the guys moving around back then and knew all these people. And I'm not going to give away anything, but you interviewed him a few years ago, and I've watched it about 30 times probably at this point. But I was very honored that y'all asked me to help kind of edit the footage together a little to show at this at Blues Festival. And the stories he tells are so natural and humble and simple. But, and again, no spoilers, but Ray Charles came to Frank's father and they had a very touching moment. And you don't find that kind of stuff in a BBC documentary or in a blues history book. When did that interview take place? How did that come about?
well, Ray Charles apparently was very upset about his early childhood, where his brother drowned right sort of in front of him, and he sort of
blamed himself.
Yeah, he felt like he could have done something more than he did, and didn't really. It was obviously a strange situation, and I don't know if he was blind at that time. I'm not sure if he, had accidents that caused his blindness, or if he was born blind.
I don't know either, to be honest with you.
I'm not really
I
certain.
think if he was blind, how would he feel bad? I mean, yeah.
Anyway, he wanted to speak with a minister, and Frank's father was a minister, so that's why he went over to his house to talk to him about that.
How did this interview come about? When did you speak with Mr. Robinson? When did all this happen?
Well, when we were working on restoring and fixing up the building, which needed a lot of work, and we were working on it, and people would stop and ask us what we were going to do with it and what was going on and what's happening. And we said, we really don't know, but it has to be fixed up before it can be anything.
Right, yeah.
So we were working on it, and not, again, knowing really what the plan was going to be. And so a lot of these folks would stop by that were Camp Street regulars, kind of, that had been going up and down Camp Street their whole lives. Mm-hmm. And we'd get conversations going, and made little bits of information would come along. And at some point, somebody mentioned, there's a blues man that lives up on College Hill. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And he goes, yeah, Frank Robinson. It was amazing to find that out. And, Frank had played in Germany and recorded over there and did some touring, and of course was very well known, regionally. And so I called him up and introduced myself and asked if I could meet him, and he was very open about that. And I went by his place and we visited, and just got to know him over the years. And we tried to get him to play, and did get him to play at Camp Street.
I've seen that. That's a great set.
Several times, and that film that you've got there was actually filmed by. Jerry Wright.
Yes.
Jerry Wright filmed him and hired him because we used to do a New Year's Eve party at Camp Street, and the Wright family would perform, and we kind of did the open mic jam thing that they used to do with a lot of regularity, and Jerry hired Frank specifically to come and be the featured performer that night. So that's how that came about, and But, and then the Piney Woods Fine Arts Association, when Brian Lake was involved, got Frank and my brother and I, Guy and I, to do a show at all the different schools in Houston County, kind of called Cowboys and the Blues. Wow. Because, of course, there was a lot of black cowboys back then and now. And there was that's one of the great things about cowboy music to me, is that there's so many influences of the various musics, African American cowboys, Irish cowboys, English cowboys,
even Germans, and all kind of it
was all mixing up. So they always talk about the melting pot being New York City. Well, it was quite a melting pot out here in the West too.
Well, a lot of men gave up their wives and lives and just showed up one day with a bedroll and a saddle and made their fortune. But this talk is so, and again, I'll show a few clips maybe while we're talking, but maybe without sound, just because I really want people to come out and watch this, because it's just fascinating. I mean, he lives right across from Mary Allen College. So he had to walk across the campus to get where he was going, and the kids would stop him every few feet and say, "Come on, Frank, play another song," and take him forever to get through there. It's just a very sweet interview. This is going to be Saturday the 25th at noon at Camp Street.
They say the documentary film will actually start at 12:15.
12:15, okay. And that's not all, though. That's just the start of a whole afternoon of stuff, isn't it?
That's the whole start of the whole afternoon and into the evening.
So at 12:15, you got and that's going to last about 45 minutes. Then up at 1 o'clock, you've got
Tony Henry.
Tony Henry, good. And then I think you're going to go on stage.
2 o'clock then would be myself and Lloyd Wright. Okay. And I'll talk about what I know about the history of the music scene in Crockett and Camp Street and how it all came about, and a few stories that I have been able to pick up along the way, and then do a set ourselves.
Well, Pipp, I appreciate you coming by, and thank you for letting me help work on that video, because I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope it turns out great, and we'll see you at the festival, I guess.
Well, good deal. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pipp.
At Darling Ingredients, we're more than a company. We're a driving force in transforming materials that others often view as waste into valuable products that feed animals, fertilize crops to fuel trucks and planes, and nourish people across the globe. From sustainable solutions that reduce food waste to innovative materials that shape industries, our work makes a meaningful impact in supporting daily life and demonstrates that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand. From right here in Houston County to more than 15 countries around the world, Darling Ingredients, exactly as nature intended.
So, I don't really have a head for hats.
It's okay.
My grandfather went to A&M back in like the 30s when nobody went to college, and he was an agri-science guy and traveled around the world and everything. And I've seen pictures of him in his hat back in the day, and it looks about this ridiculous. I mean, it literally looks like, "Excuse me, mister, do you sell those cowboy type hats there in the store? Let me have one of those so I look local. Thank you. How are y'all's doing? How are the cattle this year, fellas?" I don't know why, and there's nothing, I can't do the slow poke, how y'all doing? I can't do the what are you looking at? And no matter how it goes, it just, I look like, as some rodeo queen candidates might say, I look like a big dork.
Thank y'all so much for watching this week's podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and please tune in for next week. Thank y'all.
Put it down, no you won't, no you won't. Say you're done, but you don't, Another post, another fight, another Facebook Friday night. You're so loud, but no one's there, just you and your plastic glare.